all just started this morning, but how are you liking this so far? Is it the first time for everybody, or have you been through the people and interviewed before? First time. Okay, cool. I know they changed it up this year, so this is our first time presenting it as well.
So a lot different this year.
Yeah.
Is it?
Like last year we had the keynote speaker led like all the workshops throughout the day. So it was a lot was just like the same person.
Yeah. Boom. It was funny. I like it.
He was a character.
Where are you all sharing? At the thing? The same. Really? No. What were you? What year? The shooting. Oskowski.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. So we are obviously talking about digital credibility today. So what that is, how to do it successfully and all of that great stuff. So I'm Victoria Knight. If I haven't met you before, I do recognize some faces in here. So I'm the library resource strategist. So I work in the library, and basically what that means is I work with faculty, I work with staff, I work with students to make sure that the library has the resources that you need. So we're constantly looking and evaluating resources to make sure you guys have the best, most up-to-date information. And I also help with reference. I'm sure and maybe have been to some classes you guys have been in before. So I like to teach students how to use the library effectively. So if you have any questions as we're going today, please feel free to interrupt. I don't mind. So I like to get your questions answered, but that's a little about me.
Okay. Hi, I'm Teresa Olson. I'm the library operations manager, so I oversee the library purchasing and our budget, and then our front desk staff and student workers. So I do less of the reference and less of the classroom stuff, but I am part of the evaluating process of what we acquire.
And I'm Alex Westgarten, for those of you who don't know me. I'll be Speaker of the Senate for MSG and co-president of Inclusion in Maryville next year. And I use he, him pronouns.
Yeah, and we did want to take a second and talk about why you should trust the information that we're giving you, like why you should trust it coming from us. And part of that is we work in the library. Our job is to evaluate resources, evaluate everything. We're constantly looking at things from all the different angles. We also have advanced degrees, so Victoria has a master in library science, and I have a master's in strategic communication and leadership. So hopefully that helps you believe what we say we're talking about.
Okay, so now what we're going to do is you've probably seen the questions around the board here. So Alex is going to break you up into groups, and then that's going to be kind of your group for this whole session. So we're going to do this activity, so whatever number group you are, go ahead and go to that board and then answer that question, but you're actually going to be moving around the room and answering every single question. So if you feel like the group in front of you left something out, or if you thought they answered it perfectly, go ahead and comment on it, add suggestions, add answers, just to get an idea of what we're going to be talking about today and the kind of things you guys do when it comes to reading news and evaluating media. So if Alex is to go ahead and break you guys up into groups, and then go ahead and
Go
find
off
your order.
1, 2, and 3. So if you want to start.
1, 2, 3, 1,
2.
3.
1, 2, 3.
Okay, so if you want to, ones start at 1,
1.
2's up here, and 3's over there. We'll spend a few minutes and rotate around the room.
And the dry erase marker that is at your number is the one you take with you?
Yeah. So we know what group said what. So you guys will always be black, you guys will always be purple, and you guys will always be blue.
How do you know what's online is true? Yeah, you do. I'll just do it as small.
taught in school, but a lot of it's not true now. Like, I was taught at trust.edu.net.org for research purposes, and we're like, no. Yeah. You're right, I think that's all right.
We'll look, yeah, peer review.
Yeah. That's what I was taught in middle school. It was .com, sharper,
If you're finished answering, you can move to the next group. Remember to take your marker with you. And there is a fourth board that we do want to answer as well at the back room.
Because, I mean, a lot of universities are putting on studies about stuff that people don't want to study. That communities are arguing about things, putting on studying on the future. So. Is it?
But is it reliable?
Yeah, so.
I mean, my websites are reliable.
If you
Wanna
guys
move
wanna
to
go
the next?
Plug myself.
down to 4 to answer that question, and then you guys.
I can plug my website, you guys should check it out. Come on, Jackie. How many times a week do you read on social media? I don't know. I don't know. Oh, you don't want to see your glasses.
Occasionally you'll see our.
I don't. I live like. I don't know. I just read financial news. I don't actually read like news.
Yeah, mine always depends on what you qualify as news and stuff. I usually read things like the entertainment industry.
We should write that for us.
I think that's actually the next question I have to go to is how do you define news?
Ah, shoot.
Anything new?
I'm gonna say for me, it's like twice a week.
Really? Just twice?
Well, I don't know. What do you find social media? Like, I'm not talking about like Twitter, Instagram, all that. I don't get my news. Actually, I get news on Twitter, but not like legit like, oh,
Yeah.
news. Like gaming news. Like, they're like, oh, this developer is making this video game. Like, this developer is playing with this.
Yeah.
So I get that off of Twitter, but that's usually reliable. It's off of Twitter. So.
Depends on like how long.
Yeah.
But like more financial stuff, I'll just get from like the news app.
Okay, so you answered your question, go ahead and switch again. So we're just gonna do this until you have answered all the questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, 2 weeks. I just realized. 12 times 12. Yeah. You know what? It's really good. Very good. How do you? All right. Something. Report. All right. What else?
Like Jackie said.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. Why are you gonna be like that? I know. The only way to get themselves is to shoot a video.
Oh,
It's not.
Yeah, right? Or the burgundy, it's really dark and it's brown. It's not the same. It's not. Specific shade of brown. They completely skip this color in all their stores.
Yeah, so if you're done, go ahead and have a seat. Okay. Alright, so obviously, I'm sure the questions have told you they were gonna talk about a lot about finding information, specifically news, because that is really the most relevant source and way we evaluate information. Like, we all read news, no matter where we're reading this news, no matter what we define as news, we're all looking and seeking out information that we wanna know about. So this is kind of where becoming digitally credible comes into play. So where do you find information? A lot of you said, so KCK, local news, The Onion for fake news, hopefully. Twitter, yeah, Snapchat news, the Apple News app, CNN. Use that on an iPhone, yeah. So these are all great answers. So it does matter where you do go out to seek information, because I'm sure, as we all know, some sources are a little better than others, and some have satire news, some have real news, some are very obviously satire, while some are trying to pass off as if they're real information, which is kind of what we're going to talk about today, how you can tell the differences between those two things. So being digitally credible is making sure that your digital persona is as credible as you want your real in-life persona to be. So you don't go around just like spouting fake things to your friends, and you don't lie all the time. So you don't want your online self to do that either. So you want to make sure you know how to evaluate information. You're sharing credible information on your various social sites, whatever it is you like to use the most, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, whatever it is you like. You want to make sure that your news feeds and your personal feeds are sharing accurate and real information. So you want to make sure you're double checking information before you click share. And so you want to make sure that the people who follow you can trust you for reliable information. And then if you have read something and later on you're like, oh, I read this thing, and someone's like, I don't know about that, like maybe you should double check that. So you want to make sure that your online information is, that you are getting accurately, is leaking into your everyday conversation. So we want everyone to look smart. That's kind of this whole thing.
So part of digital credibility is information literacy, and information literacy is really important. So it helps readers put aside their emotions to check the facts, to evaluate the information without letting your emotions come into it. It helps make you make good decisions, and it helps you learn critical thinking. And that's a really important thing as part of a college student, and then also when you get out into the workforce.
Yeah, and just to mention in the back, it was how many times do you read social media a week? So statistics do show that your demographic is going to social media for news about like 50% of the time, and online it's like 68% of the time. So that is the bulk of where you guys get your information. I'm sure you all know that, you live it every day. So on the back it was like 5 times a week, once a day. So it's really easy to just open your phone up and look for news. So it's the way you can access information so quickly is what makes it so important to know how to evaluate things correctly. So if you want to go ahead and talk about bias, that'd be great.
So what's really important to know with biases is that sometimes even places that look credible aren't actually credible news, especially based on some of your own personal feelings. An easy example with how hot politics are right now, say you're somebody who really doesn't like President Trump and you do a quick Google search, you're gonna get millions and millions of posts about Donald Trump. You click on one and it's like, Donald Trump ate a cat for dinner tonight. Probably not gonna be credible, but people who don't check their bias and don't like check the credibility of the site or the source, they'll go ahead and share that on Facebook. I'm sure we've all seen people who share crazy stories on Facebook and Instagram all the time. But that's why when you don't check that bias, then you're going to be that person who is sharing that type of misinformation, and when someone like scrolls past your Facebook feed, they're gonna be like really, Sean? You think Donald Trump eats cat kittens for dinner? But that's why it sounds funny, but the problems occur when you have real like blogs and different types of websites that try to make themselves look more real and more credible than they are, and they share information that can kind of create more hostilities and problems, and when those get shared, you escalate tensions without there actually being a problem in the first place. Which is why like checking your bias to make sure that you are going through and checking where the source is coming from, where their information is coming from, is really important.
Yeah, so those are all really great points, and that goes back to what Teresa said about kind of checking your emotions. So the more you learn to critically evaluate, the less your emotions will get in the way. So while you do strongly believe something, it's also really important to be well informed on that topic. And so sometimes you read a story that you don't agree with, but it might be accurate and true information. So it's important to put your emotions aside, no matter what they might be, to make sure you're getting credible information. And so that kind of goes into, we talked about why it's important, but we need to talk about how we're actually going to be putting this into practice. So what are the steps we need to take to evaluate information correctly? And that is where the very lovely crack test comes in. And I know this is kind of small. It is on the side screen as well. We do have this URL here at the top. And so it's, and it was in the like handout thing you guys all got, I think. So that's gonna have this on there in case you wanna blow it up and make it a little bigger. So the first thing, this is a quick guide to resource evaluation. It's possible some of you have seen this before. We call it the crack test. So the first one you wanna look at is currency. So that is, when was this information published? Because we're always learning new information. Our ideas are always being updated by what's going on around us. So if something was posted, even now, like sometimes it could be hours ago, something could be false at this exact moment. So we need to make sure that we are looking at current and updated information and making sure that things we share don't seem outdated. So I see things all the time, people sharing it. Actually, an example of this just happened to me the other day. Someone shared something about all the flooding that happened like 3 years ago, and so a road I use every day was gonna be closed. And I was like, oh no, why is this road gonna be closed? And when I opened it up, it was from like 2017. I was like, great, this is not useful to me. This road is not gonna be closed. So just checking, like, when was this published? That road is not gonna be closed. It was closed 3 years ago. So that's a really important part of the crack test.
Second one is relevance. So you really wanna make sure that the information, the source that it comes from, that everything about it is relevant to what you are looking for. So let's say you're reading a news article and you're looking for something about nursing. You want to make sure that the source also has something to do with nursing. One of the things that I do in the library is I process our interlibrary log, which is finding articles, and so from different libraries. And one of the things that I always see is these titles, and there are a lot of nursing titles, but the journals that they're coming from, the magazines that they're coming from, are not necessarily relevant sources. So really looking to make that connection to that it's relevant to what you're looking into.
And the next one is going to be authority. So this one is really important, especially now in the age of blog posts, and anyone can really design a website. It's not that hard now. So authority is, does this person have the authority to be talking or writing on this subject? Because anyone can go and say whatever they want about whatever it is they want to write about, but we have to make sure that we're taking a few extra steps to look up who this author is. Do they have the credibility to be writing on this subject? We all just can't blindly believe whatever it is we're reading. I think we all know that by now. The internet has probably fooled people time and time again. So having that authority is really important when creating content. So who is the author? First off, if you can't find an author, that's probably a red flag. And if you do find them and you Google them and they're like, nobodies who have no like degree or anything that talks about this really particular subject they're talking about, then maybe this isn't the exact person you should be trusting for this kind of information.
The next one is accuracy. So when you're looking at something, do they cite or do they use reliable sources as well? So you don't just want to trust that something is true. It might be their opinion, but if they're citing things and those are real things, to look at that accuracy. You also want to look at, does this have typos in it? Is there any weird setup? I know with online, it's really easy to make things look good. Like in our research for this, we found some really good looking websites that were fake. And so to really pay attention to the small details. And then does it seem free of bias or misinformation, emotion? So that's also part of this accurately.
Yeah, and the last one is purpose. So what is the reason for this information? Like someone wrote, or where do you find news? They wrote The Onion. So when you go to The Onion, it's really obvious that the goal that they're trying to do with that information is to entertain you. Like it's there to make you chuckle. And so it's really important to make sure you know like why they're publishing this information, kind of what their goal is with publishing this information. And that goes back to what Alex was talking about with kind of checking your own bias, because a lot of what is spread through misinformation is political, just because that's the topic that gets everybody really heated up, and it's all full of emotion and bias. And so it's really important to know, why would this person publish this? What is their goal in publishing this information? So it's really important to know if the work is in fact factual, or if it's published as fiction or propaganda. So it's important to know what you're looking at to be able to evaluate it correctly. So this is just one part of resource evaluation. One of the beautiful things about research, I think, is that it is kind of a never-ending cycle, which really stresses some people out, but I really like it. So once you think you're done, really you can just kind of start over, and you can find so much more information. It's really scary, actually. So it's the same thing with evaluating those resources. The process never really ends. So just because we did this whole crop test doesn't mean that the resource is going to be perfect or that the information is going to be super credible. It just looks like it might be because it hits these boxes. So somebody actually said, how do you know what you read online is true? And just check multiple sources. That's the best thing you can possibly do. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about now. And it's actually called lateral reading. So there is a term for that, checking multiple sources. So it's kind of just like reading as if you are a fact checker. So we're going to watch this video that kind of introduces lateral reading, and we'll have a little discussion afterwards.
Hi, I'm John Green. Welcome to Crash Course Navigating Digital Information. So today we are going to learn one of the most important skills of 21st century life, and I don't say that lightly. So you know my name and that this is an episode of Crash Course, but there's a lot that doesn't tell you. It doesn't tell you, for instance, that Crash Course is a product of Complexly, a company owned by my brother and me and funded partly by support from Patreon, partly by advertisers, and partly by grants from organizations. It also doesn't tell you who works on the show, a large team of producers, editors, writers, illustrators, and more. You're looking at some of them now. And as I mentioned in previous videos, the folks at MediaWise also helped us make this video. MediaWise was created with support from Google, and it's a collaboration between the Poynter Institute, a nonprofit journalism school, and the Stanford History Education Group, a university-based research group. All of this is helpful to know when navigating digital information, because understanding where information came from helps us to understand if it's reliable. How do you even find a source in a world where no one has to cite sources, and what citations do exist are perpetually disappearing? Well, to quote my friends Rhett and Link, let's talk about that. So information does not just appear, even if it's automated or driven by an algorithm. A Twitter bot, for instance, is not a person, but they were created by people, as are the algorithms that declare what topics are trending in online discourse. So all information is produced by someone, but it's also produced for a purpose. Like newspapers are created by journalists and editors to inform the public about things editors think they should know, but of course they also have to sell subscriptions and advertisements to support themselves. Advertisements are created by companies to convince customers to buy or use their products. Movies and books are created to entertain or to stir up important cultural conversations, or both. The lines between these motives, of course, are not always clear. Advertisements often feel informative and sometimes seek to be informative, like those medicine ads that list 143 side effects in 10 seconds because they are required to do so by law. And while journalism should seek to inform, journalists are humans and they make choices both about what to cover and how to cover it, choices we may not agree with. Movies and books may exist to entertain and enlighten, but they can also exist to sell things. It's no coincidence, for instance, that everyone in the Fault in Our Stars movie uses Apple products. So the first question we have to ask ourselves is, who made this and why? And we mustn't oversimplify those answers. Like, I wrote The Fault in Our Stars because I was inspired by my friend Esther, and also because I wanted to explore whether a short life can be a full life, and also because I thought people would read it and pay for it. The book was also a product of my editor and Penguin Random House, my publisher. They also thought people would read it and buy it. None of those motivations negates any of the others. But of course, understanding who is actually behind a project can be really difficult, especially online. I mean, catfishing is now a verb because it's so easy to pretend to be what you're not. The Stop City Funded Internet campaign is a good example of what I mean. So in early 2018, the city of West Plains, Missouri was working on a taxpayer-funded municipal internet service project. If successful, it would provide residents with cheaper high-speed internet. And while the city was working on this plan, a website for the Stop City Funded Internet campaign popped up. It claimed to be a grassroots community of local fiscal conservatives against the plan. The campaign site looked pretty sleek and professionally designed. It had a clear stated mission and high-quality photography. Oh, and also a list of all the ways that municipal internet service projects have failed. And just by looking at the website, you would not be able to tell who was really behind that campaign because it didn't name names or list its leadership. But in the end, someone did discover the brains behind the operation. It was, of course, Fidelity Communications, a local commercial internet provider that didn't want to lose customers. And the only reason they came clean was because a Missouri man noticed the file name of the site's logo had Fidelity in it. But most of the time, we don't need to search source code to know more about who shared the information that we're consuming. We just need to learn to read differently. So we tend to read websites like we read books or articles. We start at the top of the page, look at the title, and scroll down from there. We read vertically. And many websites look legitimate when you're reading vertically because you're only seeing what their creators want you to see. And creators know what we think makes websites look authoritative. A well-designed logo, references and citations, professional photography, no grammatical errors or typos. And so when you read vertically, it is often impossible to distinguish reliable information from unreliable. But introducing other strategies into your reading, like looking elsewhere for additional information, can help you find out a lot more. When you're on a new website, instead of staying put and taking their word for it, you should just leave. Open a new tab and start looking for more information. That's called lateral reading. It's lateral because instead of moving up and down, you're moving from tab to tab. Basically, what I'm saying is that when your browser looks like this, it can actually be good news. Like, here's a website from the American Legislative Exchange Council, or ALEC. This page from 2018 is about a back and forth in the federal government over regulating internet service providers like Comcast, Verizon, and AT&T. Regulating those providers could include setting the prices and rates for their services, or whether they're allowed to collect tolls from websites or content creators, among other things. Apparently, ALEC is against government regulation of internet service providers. So we want to know who ALEC is. We can tell a few things by looking at their website, namely that this site is apparently not run by Haley Baldwin's famous uncle. Also, the site has a .org web address, which is often used by nonprofits. And the logo looks serious and kind of fancy. The website's easy to use. ALEC's About page says it's America's largest nonpartisan voluntary membership organization of state legislators dedicated to the principles of limited government, free markets, and federalism. Its board of directors page lists many U.S. representatives and senators. And if we stay on this page, it all seems, kind of boring and standard. But if you open a new tab and search ALEC, okay, yeah, the first results are Alec Baldwin, Haley's uncle. But below that, and below ALEC's website, lies their Wikipedia page and a website called alecexposed.org. Toward the bottom of the first page of search results, there are news articles by websites like The Atlantic and The Guardian. These say that corporations and nonprofits are also members of ALEC. We learned that one of ALEC's stated goals is to bring corporate leaders and legislators together so they can craft laws. A search for ALEC members shows that AT&T, Comcast, and Verizon have all been members, which means the original article about internet regulation has some, big conflicts of interest. Internet service providers obviously have a huge financial incentive to fight regulation, but the article doesn't disclose that. So in this case, lateral reading helped us find out who's really behind information, a huge group of lawmakers working with big corporations toward their common interests. All right, so now that you understand the idea of lateral reading, you may be wondering where you should go when you open that next tab. There are plenty of online sources you can use to look into different organizations and authors. They may not be perfect, but they're a good starting point if you're just trying to learn a little bit about a source of information. Let's go to the thought bubble. Newspapers can be a good place to start. Some of them have been around for decades or even centuries. They have tons of information. Traditionally, newspapers provided written information about current events printed daily or weekly. Today, many newspapers have turned into digital media companies that publish news online daily in a variety of formats. Some focus on international or national news, and others focus on local news. Magazines and digital news sites are useful for lateral reading too. However, it's important to note that many online news organizations have their own point of view. Sometimes these are explicit liberal or conservative political leanings, but sometimes they're much harder to pinpoint, like a mashup of their contributors' own interests and perspectives. Like a website written specifically about comics for and by women might cover the new Captain Marvel trailer differently than a site with all male writers would, for instance. We'll talk more about authorial perspective in our next episode. Fact-checking websites can also be an excellent resource. Sites like Snopes.com and PolitiFact.com are well-respected fact-checking sites created by researchers and journalists with the goal of fact-checking articles, public statements, and even social media posts. Of course, that doesn't mean they're never wrong, because they are also created by humans, but they do strive to be right. But like every resource, fact-checking websites are just one tool in the toolbox. There is no magic arbiter of truth. Thanks, Thought Bubble.
Okay. So, does anyone have any questions about lateral reading, or was anything in that video like new information or weird information? Okay, I think we're kind of all on the same page here. So, lateral reading is a really, really, really great thing to do pretty much all the time for everything. So we kind of talked about vertical reading and lateral reading. So the crab test would really be a great example of vertical reading. So we went through the website or the article or the blog post or whatever it was, and we looked at that one page. And that one page looks kind of legit based off of the things we discovered during the crab test. However, we all saw anyone can make a good, convincing website. So sometimes going out, opening those tabs, and then going lateral is a really great tool to make sure you're digesting quality and accurate information.
Okay, so next we're going to do a group activity. So we're going to ask you to get back into your groups from the beginning together and find an area together. And then, do you all have iPads or phones or something? Okay. We're going to have you go to this website, liveguides.maryville.edu/digital-credibility. This is actually a website we built for you all. And so on this tab area, if you want to go to lateral reading activity. So who's group 1? Group 1, you're going to have Pig Saves Goat. Group 2, NASA Frog. Group 3, which one do you want? Shocking ingredients in beer. So what we're asking you to do is take what you've learned from the craft test, but also mainly lateral reading, and look at this article, video, picture, whatever it is that you have, and then try to find out, A, is it true or not, or how true is it? B, what other information can you find? What other resources can you find about it? And then there are some questions for each one to sort of help you get started. You're welcome to use a whiteboard around you if you want to take notes, and then you will be presenting your findings to the group. Are there any questions? If you have them as we go and work as a group, just let us know.
Did everyone find the page okay to start off with? Okay. How's it going so far? Did you all watch the cute pics they put out?
Not yet.
Just animals doing anything. I'm into it. Remember to talk to your group because they might be finding things that you're not. Or you all found the same thing. Who knows?
can't have GMO option.
Fake news.
And were you able to find information about that? What's her background, her education?
Yeah, as soon as you open the site, like, it comes with an advertisement to buy her book.
Yeah, the pop-up.
Mm-hmm.
That's JavaScript. No, it's,
So you'll be ready to talk about it? Just sort of describe what it is, and then what you found.
but, you know, I noticed we never made like pop-ups for required. He like showed us like day one, and he was like, okay. Maybe I should ask that.
So have you found out, like, maybe the reason why,
Actually, it is.
or why the video was taken?
I can't find it's fixed. Seeds.com, you interested? Trying to sell you a book. So, earlier she says in her book is false.
Well, you know, a little bit to see if you can find out more about the people who.
But like, why would they let her publish a book if it's not true? I don't like this. I'm just not gonna read anything ever again.
Give up.
Let's see who this person is. So she's an activist. Okay, she has a picture of Barack Obama. She's legit. Hey, look,
See
she
the
was,
stuff she's been on, and the first thing I see is Dr. Alex.
well, she went to the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. Isn't that when we were just talking about that today?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a legit school. Hmm. See? And Barack Obama. Oh, see, she is a New York Times bestselling author. Her company says it's Chick-fil-A and Kraft. May have, never mind.
So do you all think you kind of found stuff, figured things out,
Where did we get that from?
had some sort of trail you followed? You saw some head nods.
2013.
Were you guys able to find out much about the person herself?
Yeah, she's got a whole bio page.
She does. A lot of words there too.
Yep,
Mm,
it's kind of,
trying to think she's kind of full of herself.
exactly. And she's very, she wants to know who she's been. Like half the time, like, I'm just scrolling through and it's like discussing food politics with actress Olivia Wilde. Okay, let's keep just Olivia Wilde.
It's funny that she only has a picture with Barack Obama, not like Michelle Obama.
Well, she had Michelle on earlier. It
Uh-huh.
says, Michelle convinced me not to go to law school.
Why would Michelle do that?
Yeah.
Come on, Michelle.
Okay, does any group want to go first?
Oh, she's got a picture of real life.
We're gonna start with
she
Ellen.
has, oh, this is just sad. She has a
Okay, so what do you
picture
guys
of
find?
Karen
Oh.
Whitney.
Talk a little bit about what your.
So what was your guys' story? So we're gonna start with group one over here.
So our story was about like a pig that apparently like went in the water and saved a goat. I believe it was a zoo or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might as well watch.
Yeah.
source posted this video of this pig saving this goat. But when we went and we searched, we actually found some other stuff. So we found, has anyone ever heard of Nathan for Hire? It's a show on Comedy Central. He goes around and does various jobs for people. And one of the jobs he did on his TV show was he went to a petting zoo. So his goal was to try and get people to come to this petting zoo. And so what he thought would work was a viral video of a pig saving a goat in this petting zoo. So you're all incredibly right. Like, it was 100% staged. You said you didn't even think the goat was drowning, because it definitely wasn't. But they actually filmed the back end of it for his TV show. So there's another video on YouTube about the pig and the goat. Like, they auditioned pigs, they built like a maze in the pond. You can find it.
Not really easily. And then there was actually a scuba diver underneath the pig guiding him, so it was all very much staged. But they made it look so real that some news sources who wanted to break news first believed it without necessarily fact-checking everything. And so that's something that happens because news sources are pushed to be the first ones to report on stuff that sometimes that isn't necessarily true.
Yeah, so definitely not true. We all figured that one out. But if you do want to go look for it, there is a video on how they made that video, and it's actually pretty funny. So let's go to group 2. Was that you guys? Okay, so what was your story? What'd you find?
So we had a story about a frog that pretty much flew alongside a NASA rocket as it lifted off. And so the original site was called Board Panda, which looks honestly kind of sketchy, and like the description of the author was really strange too. So at first I was like, I don't know about this, but when you like search it in other places, like we all found it on, like I found it on The Guardian, The Atlantic, and like the NASA website, National Geographic. So like, and across the board, it pretty much all has the same information of frog lifted off with the rocket, and the same picture and everything. So it's pretty credible, we decided.
Yeah, so just because the original source didn't look credible doesn't mean the information isn't. It just means that that website decided to post about it as well. But there is no means breaking news on Board Panda. Board Panda did not take the photo. They were just copying the information off for their own website, probably to try and get clicks and views, or they thought the story was funny, I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely true, and the person who originally posted the picture itself was NASA, so, I mean, it was their picture, they posted it. But then when we were searching, we found a whole bunch of other stuff about like the environmental damages of the rocket launch site being so close to places where like nature lives. So like how many animals have been harmed, how many rockets have been launched, all that good stuff.
Yeah, there's another article about how a fruit bat attached onto one of like the rockets that been launched previously.
So doing lateral reading sometimes can open a whole can of worms you did not even intend to open. So we got kind of sucked into the animals near the NASA launch site for a while. But yeah, so we brought them to the site, but it was a real news story, so they figured that out by going to other sites and finding it through other verifiable sources. Okay, so let's go to the last group. So who wants to talk about the story you had and what you found and all that good stuff?
So our website is a blog, and this lady posts about how beers have like really bad chemicals and colorings, and they use like fish bladder in the production of it. And it is partly true, like GM crops and all that, but she's like focusing on like negative sides, like, and people like usually know that like beer is not good for your health. So it is like not entirely wrong, but definitely heavily biased. And a lot of other sites are kind of telling us that it's not like or true. She's kind of exaggerating things a lot, and you know, things like that.
Yeah, so what other sources did you find that talked about? Her name is the Food Babe, is what she calls herself. If that makes you roll your eyes at all.
There's like other bloggers and you know, just like other news articles and research.
Also, if you go on Wikipedia and like look up her name, I forget her name, but Vanny, I don't know. Yeah, so if you look up that and you go on Wikipedia, and like the second paragraph's like, oh, Kraft and another company, oh, Chick-fil-A, may have changed their ingredients due to reading this book. And then if you click like the indentation to go to the website where that's pulled from, I forget what the website was, but it wasn't memorable and it didn't look real, so I was like, okay, it may have. So it's trying to draw credibility when it's like not even real credibility, so yeah.
Yeah. Did you guys find anything else about the food babe?
She's a commercial or something. Yeah, she has something to do with this food company, I think.
Yeah, she, like, on her own website, she started her own line of food products that she sells, and she has like a subscription service that she'll put recipes together for you for a monthly fee. So like all of those are kind of like red flags. Not to say that people who sell things are all liars, but on your own website, sometimes it can be kind of like, oh, you're just here to sell products. Did you guys find out anything specific about the person herself? Did you look into her credibility or why she thinks she can write books about this topic? And actually, I looked her up directly. It took me a while to find, but because I was curious what her degree was in. I could find out where she went to college very easily, but I had a hard time finding out what her degree was in, why she thinks she can write about food science so like openly to the world. And she has a degree in computer science and worked in banking until she started this website. So really, she has no authority whatsoever to be doing this. It's just a topic that interests her, which is totally fine. Like you can be interested in something that you don't have a degree in. But to claim all of these things without any real knowledge or idea of what you're claiming is kind of dangerous sometimes, because in this article she claims that there is a material that is an antifreeze in beer, and so she went around saying that beer is poison because it has antifreeze in it, but it doesn't. And so when we were searching, we found an NPR article about a scientist who was kind of like breaking down her claims and like why that's wrong and what the actual ingredients are. So pseudoscience is a really big problem, and people can claim a lot of things online. So it's really important to make sure you look at the people, make sure they actually have the credibility to be writing on these topics, because in my personal opinion, I don't think she does, but a lot of people really like her, and she's got a really large online following. So obviously she has a couple books that she was aggressively pushing in our faces.
So then have you seen, as we're doing these activities, how you're using part of the craft test to look at things, and then also lateral reading, and see how you can use that to verify that what you're using, what you're sharing, what you're looking at is credible? Have you seen that? Okay.
You all did it whether you knew really you were doing it or not, just as long as you guys all looked at the websites, you thought, why is this real, why is this not? And then you all went to other sources to make sure you were finding real information. That's exactly what we want you to do all the time. It's a great practice to get into for both your own research for your classes, research for topics that you're interested in, or if you guys are all part of student organizations, so if there's ever anything you need to look up for those organizations, it's important to make sure you know how to find credible information, especially when sharing on your social sites and stuff.
So we wanted to say this website, we built it for you all, so it's gonna stay there. You have the URL. There's also things that we're not talking about on here on the find out more and helpful library resources. So there is more information than what we're covering in here.
Yeah, so one thing I want to plug real fast is that as Vanderbilt students, you all have a free subscription to the New York Times, if you didn't know that already. I know, it's like a secret on campus. At the library, you can sign up for a subscription to the New York Times, and you can get the digital content either sent to your phone or to your iPad for free. So don't pay for the New York Times. And if you go to their website, sometimes they'll be like, oh, well, you only get so many free stories a month or a week or whatever it is. But if you go to the library website, you can sign up for a New York Times account. So you can always find good information very quickly through the New York Times.
So,
What link is that?
It's on the library
if you go to
resources
this
tab.
guide here on the helpful library links, it's gonna be like the first one. It'll take you to a place where you make an account. Just use your Maryville email and you'll get full access until you graduate.
Wow.
so as student leaders and members of organizations, why do you guys think this is important?
So if something happens, like say, and we wanna share it, we gotta know that it's like legit before we put it on ours, because we're representing Maryville and we're representing ourselves. So yeah.
I feel like for a lot of our orgs, we do a lot of discussion about current events, and sometimes they're kind of like the key, like topic of any discussions or meetings that we have, so it's important that if we're discussing them, and especially to other general board meetings, that we have the responsibility to, produce, like, accurate information.
Or even, I know a couple people said they're from CAD and Connect, and we talked about the road closure article. From being out of date, if you're taking someone to an off-campus excursion, and you read an article that says, hey, this road is closed, and then you're like, oh wait, I guess we can't really go there now, because we can't get there, and you cancel the activity, but then people find out you could have gone anyway, because the road wasn't actually closed. You see, like, the type of situation that's gonna put your, or maybe yourself in. What do you guys think about that?
That's relevant for the mascot team.
Yeah.
We go to a lot of off-campus events and like, we don't get paid to go, but if the mascot doesn't show up, then our organization takes a bit of a hit.
Yeah, so you guys gotta show up where you're supposed to show up. And yeah, so a lot of the organizations on campus do a lot of events that are aimed at current events on campus. And so it's important to make sure that, yeah, you're sharing information both on your own personal account, but if you're in charge of a social account for your organization, that the information you share there is credible too, because it's really important. It's important that your organization is sharing quality information, because you don't want that to backfire in the long run, because it totally can. So there are some definite real world consequences to sharing false information. It can spread, it spreads the false information and can rile people up. We talked about checking your own bias, we talked about checking your emotions. A lot of those things are aimed at making people kind of like upset and really divided. So sharing quality information can kind of help us all think about things logically and kind of unite us all in this like share for trying to figure out what's actually happening in the world. And so it's important that we know how to evaluate that information to make sure we're looking at real stuff. So if you see someone sharing something that's false, what do you do about that? Just a big question. There's no right answer. It's just what would you do? Yeah.
I would say like go to that individual first and like talk to them like, hey, like where'd you hear about this? Or did like just ask what their sources were and then like be like, oh, well, you know, I heard da-da-da and here are my sources. Like, they'll understand. I feel like it might be the best way instead of like going to like an advisor first, because you should definitely talk to that person first.
Yeah, and I think I like the key of that sentence is talk to them, but don't just like comment on their post and be like, this is lies, you're dumb. That one like can incite riots. We've all seen Twitter feeds and Facebook comment sections that are just like totally brutal and terrible to read. So you don't want that to happen. Like we want people to feel empowered through information. We don't want to shame people. We want to be like, hey, that source isn't, like, I know that source not to be true because of these reasons. And having like an open dialogue about it can really help, because we don't want people to be like, oh man, I guess I can't share anything ever again because I shared that one thing, you know, I feel bad about myself. So we want to make sure that we aren't doing that to people. So having conversations in person can really help. But also making sure that the language we use isn't like attacking anyone, and if we are going to correct somebody, we make sure that we have the proper sources and facts to back up the real information.
Anybody have any questions?
Okay, yeah, that's digital credibility. Now you're all pros, right?
So we hope this session has been useful to you.
Yeah. We have a box. You probably all have them because we talk them everywhere. But we have a box of library dry erase markers if you want to grab one on your way out. There are obviously dry erase boards everywhere, so please take one if you want one. That is all I have today.
And then also, if anything ever comes up, we are almost always at the library, so you can always stop by to see us.
Yeah, you can just sign up for it. Yeah, perfect. Enjoy the rest of your day.